I was always conflicted about it. Not conflicted, but because I am a descendant from Jason, there was a story in my family, which turns out not to be true, that Jason was a pacifist and that he was a pacifist for religious reasons. My parents were both Quakers. They were converts to the Quaker meeting, not the Quaker church, but I grew up in a Quaker meeting. And my parents were very, very active in the civil rights movement. My mother marched with Dr. King, and my parents, worked very hard on civil rights issues and also peacetime issues. And I think it just became the story that Jason was a Quaker, that his wife Ellen was a Quaker, and that was the source of his pacifism. And I always really struggled with, okay, are we pacifists or do we believe in violent resistance? Which is it?
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to reconcile those two things.
Hmm.
Yeah. So, but Jason's a real character for sure. He's not like the other Brown children. He did
Um,
fight at Osawatomie, but I think he was just sort of characterologically nonviolent. He just didn't have the stomach for it. He was a gentle soul by all accounts.
yeah, there's one bit, and I didn't print it out, but there's one brief statement where in an interview late in life, Jason sort of said that, and I think he didn't mean it seriously, but he said, his father thought that he was the coward in the family. Um, but really was that he was gentle. He was a gentle soul, and by the description of him here, but he was willing to fight. As a matter of fact, this may surprise people. I just mentioned it to you guys before we came on from an interview with Jason Brown, December 28th, 1908, by Catherine Mayo, who was the assistant to Oswald Villard. And really, her interviews and her material is probably better than Villard's book. But this is what she writes. She said, Jason said of the swords he sharpened for his father's use at Potawatomi, that if he knew of their intended use, what he came to learn later, he would have, quote, taken pains to make a better job of it than I did, to have put a sharper edge on them, end quote. Um, he wasn't a pacifist, right? In fact, Villard was the pacifist, which is why he really attacked, your forebear, called him a principled murderer. But Jason is interesting in that regard. I think Owen also close to that in the sense that they're both really stalwarts, very faithful, very committed, and yet at the same time they weren't identical. Maybe Jason, most of all, was the least like his father. Even the old man, if you don't mind me saying that, said that, right? He said he's not prone to tell people what to do.
Yeah, and this is one of the myths about John Brown is that I encounter sometimes when I talk to people is that the family was somehow cult-like, right? Like he was this charismatic leader that people were following. And that's definitely not true. He raised a whole bunch of free-thinking iconoclasts,
Yeah.
They were all, especially Diantha's children, John Jr. and Jason and Owen and Frederick and Ruth to a lesser extent. They were odd, and they were just free-ranging, free thinkers,
Yeah.
not at all like their father. They didn't share his religion. But this is one of the things about John Brown and the Brown family more generally, is this sort of expansive view. It's like he didn't care if you were Jewish or Native American or who you were. If you were on the side of justice and abolition, you were part of the family, you were.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. It's a kind of a refreshing form of orthodoxy in the sense that he had his own convictions, and they were very, very real and very consistent with the old Reformation ideas. And yet, as you said, he wasn't at all bothered working with people, everyone from transcendentalists to spiritualists, as you said, the Quakers. He got along with everybody because he felt that the pressing principle of life was justice and liberation. And you can deal with everything else. You can have your debates and argue all you want, but and if I remember correctly, he engendered debates among his men. Um, so it is interesting that you're saying that because people do tend to think that all these kind of all these brown children were all kind of browbeaten and under the
Soldiers.
yeah, and they were. As a matter of fact, religiously, if anything, I think if I'm not mistaken, in the first set of children. Only Ruth ended up kind of going her father's way. Everybody else had their own ideas.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
They were not I mean, I don't know what their religious beliefs were. Ruth, I don't know. She's the one that got the Bible. He gave the family Bible to Ruth
Yeah.
specifically because she did share his religious convictions, unlike his other children who were more free thinkers. Junior got into spiritualism, and all sorts of
Yeah.
he was a tinkerer and all sorts of things, phrenology and spiritualism, and
Yeah.
he was even a Mason, which his father would not have approved of.
Yeah. That's right. I think he had a Masonic burial, right?
Yeah,
I
I think
mean,
so.
I think John Brown was turning over his
I think
grave
he must have
after
been, right?
he made such a big deal about leaving it. But yeah, but it just, and I don't look at that as a betrayal. I look at that as, well, he gave them wings and they flew.